Russia versus Ukraine legal questions with attorney Andy Semotiuk. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas. Welcome back to the show. And today I have again with me attorney Andy Semotiuk, who will be talking to us this time not about immigration, but another international law issue, which is the war in Ukraine. As people have known who are used to this channel, we've talked about the Ukraine topic before with different guests over the last couple of years. And so it's always been an interesting topic that I like to go into. Unfortunately, the war's still with us. We're in 2024, and so this is still raging on. So today, have a guest to talk about it again and bring us up to speed about what's going on, but look at it from the perspective of the law. All right. And attorney Andy Semotiuk, welcome back. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Really glad to be with you. I'm very excited about talking about this subject.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And so before we started recording, I was mentioning to you that some months ago, I recall the Tucker Carlson interviewing Putin video, and it was interesting. We got the perspective of the Russian leader. Many people in America were intrigued by it. Whatever side you're on, in the war, it was a little eye-opening, I guess, to hear directly from the leader of the Russian people. Again, strong opinions about Putin and this country and the USA, but the war is going on and it is affecting Americans. It's affecting our economy. It's affecting our elections even. So this is a topic that is on fire in this country. But I'm a nerd, so like you, I like to learn about things and hear different perspectives. And so you bring a lot of knowledge, about this area to the table. So from what I understand, you used to be a UN journalist, correspondent with the United Nations from 1975 to 1977. And so I wanted to let people know that as a way to let you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background when it comes to international law and some of the things you've done in this space. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm an advisor to the Center for Eastern European Democracy in Toronto. And also I have traveled extensively. I've been an election observer in Ukraine in the past on behalf of Canada in that case. And I follow this area pretty closely because my background, my parents were Ukrainian. They came to Canada, and some of my family came to the United States after World War II. So I'm quite conversant in the area, and I've written 2 books on the subject from an immigrant experience point of view. But I'd like to just lay the groundwork out a little bit. And the groundwork is this. Today, as we talk, Volodymyr Zelensky is in Washington meeting with, I think, Mr. Trump, former President Trump. And President Trump seems to feel that he can solve the problem in 24 hours and just resolve the issue of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And essentially, what I think President Trump has in mind is just surrender Ukraine to Putin and the war is over. Well, the war isn't over. There are people who will be slaughtered. There's been a genocide going on in Ukraine. The Russian army has been recorded to have committed hundreds of thousands of war crimes. And this war is unlike any other war because this war is on national television and everything is being recorded as events proceed. There's Bucha, there's Irpin, Mariupol, and so on, where we see every day the destruction that's going on. The problem is that Russia is in Ukraine. Russian soldiers are in Ukraine. Russian bombs are falling on Ukraine. It's not
Yeah.
Ukraine trying to invade Russia. Uh, that's not the text that we got to worry about. The text is Ukraine is trying to defend itself. But let's talk about the legal aspects a little bit closer.
Yeah.
I think the starting point is we fought two world wars, World War One and World War Two, largely over the question of sovereignty of nations and borders. We finally, at the end of World War II, came to the view that after 50 million people died and perished, that the question of borders needs to be resolved. And in the Helsinki Accords, all the nations in Europe got together and decided, okay, these are the borders. And from now on in Europe, if we're going to be changing any borders, it's going to have to be by consent and agreement between the powers involved. And for approximately 70 years or whatever it is since the Helsinki Accords were signed and after World War II,
Yeah.
things have been treated that way, that there have been no incursions by any force on another until Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, the invasion actually started 10 years ago. It was in 2014 on the eastern part of Ukraine and in Crimea that Russia first invaded Ukraine. But only 2.5 years ago was it a full scale invasion of all of Ukraine. Here's the key thing for Americans to remember about this war and what people like Carlson forget about in terms of talking to Putin. In 1994, Ukraine, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, ended up being the third most powerful nation in the world as far as nuclear weapons were concerned.
Yeah.
It had a stockpile, including strategic and tactical nuclear weapons, that that nations were concerned about. What should Ukraine do about this nuclear arsenal that they ended up with? And so the countries got together: Russia, Ukraine, the United States, the UK, France, and China got all together, and they had discussions in Budapest
Mhm.
to decide what to do. And the agreement that was reached was, if Ukraine would surrender all of its nuclear weapons to Russia, the United States, the UK, France, and China would guarantee the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine. That was the agreement. Ukraine surrendered its arms.
That
But
was 1994, right?
1994.
Yeah.
But today, Russian soldiers are on Ukrainian lands. Uh, if you want a simple sort of analogy, you're sitting at home watching TV, and some guy breaks into your house and says, I'm going to live here now. And you say, wait a minute, this is my house. And the guy said, no, no, this is my house. Sometime in the past, someone from my family used to live here for some time. Say, no, no, this is my house. Get up. That's what's going on in terms of the day-to-day conflict in Ukraine. Now, I might add that this conflict between Ukraine and Russia has been going on for over 300 years.
Yeah.
First, it was Tsarist Russia, then it was the Soviet Union, then it was Russia, and so on. And one of the key things about it is Russia today has taken over as a legacy of the Soviet Union in terms of having a seat in the Security Council at the United Nations, taking over all the consulate and embassies all over the world. But it has not been held accountable for the crimes that were committed in the past. So, for example, at Nuremberg, Germany, the German people, the leaders of Germany, Nazi Germany, were punished. They were prosecuted and they were punished for their crimes. But the crimes of the Soviet Union and Soviet leaders were not raised at that time. What crimes? One thing that Carlson did not raise and could be raised is the fact that there was what's called it was a genocide, a holodomor in Ukraine, where 4 million people were starved to death at the hands of Stalin, who imposed a genocidal famine. 4 million people. That was in Ukraine, and another million beyond the borders of Ukraine, Ukrainian people who died. And all these war crimes that are going on right now in Ukraine that are being documented. There's a lady that won a Nobel Prize from Ukraine, a lawyer, Matvienko is, I think, her name, or
Mhm.
Matvichuk. She had an organization, or has an organization, that's been documenting all these war crimes that have been taking place. So, and forgive me if I
No, no,
carry
you're
on.
fine.
Yeah,
It's fascinating. But back to the legal perspectives, though, I like to know specific blocks of time. So there was Helsinki Accords, I think that's 1975.
right.
Then there's Budapest Agreement, 1994. And in your position, or what you're saying is historically, we shouldn't need to go back in time 800 years, like Putin was saying. We need to look at what was the deal. There was a deal back in 94, and it
Right.
hasn't been honored. The Ukrainians gave up their weapons,
Correct.
like, and their sovereignty was supposed to be protected, based on Helsinki.
Right.
However, that hasn't happened either. And if Putin can do this, he can then decide, do you want to do something different tomorrow and change other borders if he wants to out of force?
Two more points.
Yeah.
Trump says, hey, I can sell this in 24 hours. How? Reach an agreement. Wait a minute. We already have an agreement. It was made in 1994. We watched Ukraine surrender its arms, nuclear arms, to Russia in exchange for protection promised by the United States. We're not doing them any favors. This
Mm.
is not a favor. We're abiding by what we promised in that agreement, right?
Yeah.
So that's point number one. And the other point is uh, today it's Ukraine. Look, you can say, Ukraine's some country out there. Who gives a damn? Like,
Mm.
it's their problem, right? Yeah, it's their problem. No, it's not. It's a problem of the international world order. Anne Applebaum, who's a historian, wrote a book recently. I've been reading it. It's called Autocracy Inc. And what it's all about is that countries like Russia, China, Venezuela, and others, the leadership there have no patience for international world order, rule of law, human
Yeah.
rights. No, they're interested in being in power and enforcing their power. And what we have is a kind of a gangster land
Mm.
growing from the United States. I mean, sorry, from the Soviet, from Russia, and from places like China, extending into other parts of the world to the point where right now in the United States, there's almost a kind of a battle over whether is America going to remain a democracy and respect the rule of law and abide by the international rule order, or are we going to allow the country to descend into uh, someone's sort of kingdom where they rise and they appoint their own people into prominent places, for example, on the bench in the Supreme Court or wherever it might be, and politicize the legal system, viewing it not as a neutral system to govern all of us, whether you're strong or not strong, weak or powerful, poor or rich, but in favor of those who are strong and who are rich,
Mm.
at the expense of ordinary people. It's a
Yep.
battle that we have to, wage and somehow sort out in favor of, the future for all of us and all our children and grandchildren to come.
Yeah, a few things. When I was a poli sci major back at the University of Florida. One book we had to read was called The Democratic Peace Theory. Democratic peace theory basically says that democracies don't go to war with each other, and they might go to war with autocracies. They might go to war with other non-democratic countries, but democratic countries, because of the built-in responsibility that the leaders have to the people, tend not to, and I don't believe there's ever been a case where democracies attack each other. And so, is that, would you, in your opinion, what's going on when you bring up examples like, Russia and China and Venezuela? These guys, Kim Jong, Un, these guys, this is what they do, right?
Yeah.
Rules-based order. What is that? It's something that is idealistic, but it's not reality. And so is that the difference, that there's ultimately a battle going on in the world, one where there's a future towards strongmen and authoritarianism to try to, protect the people and demagoguery, and the other, people trying to have representative democracy. What are your thoughts?
I think you nailed it right on the head, especially in the nuclear age. Are we to live in a world where one person is going to decide our
Yeah,
future and have his finger on the button that can destroy like hundreds of millions of people? Or is this person going to be held accountable? I would say a big issue in international law is accountability, that people be held accountable. And the best example is Germany. Germany committed certain, Nazi Germany committed certain war crimes and so on. But they were held accountable and they paid the price for their war crimes. And today, Germany is a respected leading country in the world. So is Japan, because they have addressed the accountability of what went on in the past. And the same needs to happen with Russia. They've not been held accountable for their conduct in the past, and the sort of legacy that they've assumed here. Um, but it's going to take people like you and I, and people who are lawyers, and especially lawyers, to lead the vanguard on something like this. Uh, the choice is basically, do we have a system of the rule of law, or do we have a system of the rule of someone who's in power that uses the law,
yeah.
uh, for their own benefit?
So let me ask you, because you brought up Trump earlier about, he wanting to solve the Ukraine Russia, thing in matter of days. Do you see any way of doing that short of giving land from the Ukrainians to the Russians?
I'll tell you, it's not about land. It's about the people on the land once it's given up. They're all going to be slaughtered.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, let's let these people be slaughtered for the sake of what? Is that a peace? It's not going to be a peace. That guy, I wish I didn't have to say these things. I wish I wasn't in the world that I'm in this
yeah,
regard. Listen, the next thing that's going to happen if Ukraine loses, the consequences will be these: 20 million refugees out of Ukraine. Take it from me. I'm an immigration lawyer. 20 million refugees coming out of Ukraine. And that's not my number, it's professionals estimating. Assumption, all these guys who are in Ukraine will now be recruited into the Red Army, the resources used for military purposes, and guess who's next? Lithuania, Poland, and so on. And guess where our people, our boys and girls, where are they going? Article 5 of NATO.
yeah,
If we abide by the commitments we've made,
yeah,
they're going to be in Europe fighting, the invasion. Why? Because Putin has stolen. But Putin's the richest guy in the world right now. And it's all been thievery. And listen, it's not me. I've there are books on this. You can read tons of books on, what he's been up to in terms of his history and biography. This guy, he has to have a war. He has to have some way of, the people in the country don't, they're not living well. The people in Moscow and in St. Petersburg, they're benefiting from life in Russia.
yeah,
Otherwise, people in Russia are it's a disaster in terms of life and life expectancy and the style of living and so on. But in order to continue to be in power, Putin needs war. He needs to have someone to blame. So he's blaming Ukraine as Nazis. He's cleaning out Nazi Ukraine, a country that's led by a Jewish leader who's today in Washington trying to, actually to talk with Trump today, and has talked with the leaders in Washington yesterday about this. Like how strange it is that that would be what Putin would be saying as what his goal is. But that's the problem: is pay a little bit today or pay a lot tomorrow, and we're on the trajectory of possibly paying a lot tomorrow. So it's sort of like, to draw an analogy,
Yeah.
if you don't pay attention to a little infection today, and deal with it and corner it and keep it at bay, tomorrow you're going to have a major illness. And that's where the world is. And that's just Russia. Consider what China's going to do if Russia wins that war. Where do you think China's going to head? Taiwan. What's North Korea going to be thinking in terms of, hey, what can I do? Look what Putin did. Let's take over South Korea, and so on, like that, down the list of tyrants around the world.
Yeah, so it's a lot to think about. And I think going back to the legal perspectives, what other I guess, um, rules-based order thing should we be thinking about? People in the audience who, were not lawyers, what else should they be considering when we look at all this?
Well, I think human rights are critical. I think, for example, an idol of mine was Andrei Sakharov, a Russian nuclear scientist. So far, I think he's called the father of the atom bomb in Russia, the Soviet Union. That guy went to trials of dissidents in the former Soviet Union to defend them. And his philosophy was, I adopt the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as my philosophy. That's it. That's what I stand for. And if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. I stand by that philosophy as well. You know, I don't care what country it is. It has to respect the human rights of its citizens and any people in it. And if it
Correct.
doesn't, then I'm not on their side, and I'm on the side of those people who are being, persecuted.
Right.
So that would be one thing. I think transparency and openness. This business of, there are trillions of dollars flushing around in the world, stolen from countries. We talked about Africa a little bit, you and I, Mac, during the break. Uh, Africa has been plundered by people stealing money from Africa for generations, and the people suffer as a result of it. And it's all these guys, these greedy like leaders who really are looking after their own interests and not the interests of the people that they're leading. There's a philosophy of life that I've adopted. It's a philosophy that was I heard it first from a guy named Zig Ziglar, who was like a big speaker in the
Yeah,
United States. And
it's
he
very
used,
popular. Mhm.
yeah, he used to say, you can get anything in life, whatever you want, so long as you help enough other people get what they want. I at first thought, oh, that's a clever little talk, clever little saying. But as I thought about it, I thought, gee, that's a pretty intelligent way to lead your life. And the opposite of that is just give me what I want and
Yeah.
to hell with everybody else. And there's
Yeah.
too much of that second type of thinking in the world today, and not
Yeah,
enough
absolutely.
of the first kind.
Yeah.
We,
No, I was thinking about that earlier. I was born in Haiti. And so whenever I hear people talking about Haitians eating cats and dogs, I was telling a friend of mine the other day that that's toxic to my spirit, because it's so hateful and hurtful. And I was thinking as I was driving to the studio today, I was like, hate begets hate, right? That's what the scripture teaches. And
Yeah,
but love begets more love. And so if people, want to keep living in the poison and the animosity, they just keep doing the same thing and you're going to get the exact same thing in response,
yeah.
right? And so I totally agree that if we want change, we have to be that change and to show other people grace, mercy, and those positive attributes. That's the only way you're going to get it back. You know,
I agree. I agree with you 100%. And it's appalling that whole episode with,
Springfield, yeah,
oh, it's like very disturbing that I don't even I don't understand why they seized upon it. Like, okay, maybe he said something stupid, but why doesn't he back off of it? I don't get that they're doubling down on it, for God's sake. Like
yeah,
in terms of the human condition and people, these people are working hard and making a new life for themselves. Do they need the attack like this? I just don't get it. And
yeah.
Haiti as a country deserves a break also. It's been it's been hell there. I don't know how the people manage.
I know.
You know.
It's a difficult situation. I came here when I was 8 years old, so I've been in the U.S. most of my life, but I remember a lot of it. And the truth of the matter is, for people who are out there, Haitians do not eat cats and dogs. And if you see some video circling on X that's portraying that, you don't judge one cookie person and say that is attributable to everybody else, to millions of people. It doesn't make any sense. But when people want to, destroy, what they'll always do is to take the least common denominator and then point there and just go to the gutter. But we have to be above it and we have to just speak the truth. And I like what somebody was posting the other day, and that is just share positive pictures of my family, enjoying regular food because
Yeah,
this is what we do, and so you just combat the lie with the truth,
yeah.
and that's the truth. So, but wow, I didn't think this talk was going to turn
Oh,
to that conversation, but no, like
let
I
me
told
say
you,
another thing.
yeah,
Not Haitians, but non-Haitians need to defend these people in Springfield.
yep,
It's below us all that there have been attacks like that. Like, how
absolutely,
dare you? How dare you say something like that in a democracy, in a civilized society?
yeah,
And if you, okay, I get it, you blew it, you stepped in it. Well, back off for God's sake, if you made a mistake.
yeah,
Uh,
I'm with you.
yeah,
So, all right. Well, we got a little off topic,
but
but I want people to know how they can get a hold of you because again, you are above all things an immigration lawyer.
yeah,
That's your day to day. And let me share my screen again. So folks who want to learn more about you can go to myworkvisa.com
right.
and you can learn more about Andy. And of course,
My,
your whole
my books are
history
on
is here, your books and all. And then the Pace Law Firm is
there. Yeah,
the law office and where everything about immigration is handled there. You're based in Toronto, Canada. However, you have a whole lot of experience all over the world, including the USA and some of our big cities. And finally, you are a contributing author on Forbes, and I'll link back to all of your articles on the show notes when people go to lmipodcast.com to check this out. All right.
wonderful.
All right, Andy Semotiuk. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate you. And hopefully somebody learned something important today. All right.
Mike, it was a pure joy to be with you today. I really liked it. You're a great guy.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. All right, everyone. Take care. Go to lmipodcast.com. Until next time. Bye bye.